would start with the CISA, and I've got a pretty much idea that you guys are from diverse background, some from finance, some from IT, and you want to do this training, and that's a very good thing as part of, as we're facing this situation and in the entire world, people are trying to upskill themselves, and CISA is one of the most valuable certification which you have chosen to upskill yourself. And CISA has not been very recently. It was there since a long time, since 1990s. Okay, now even 1990s, you know that our IT systems were not that much of prevalent, I would say. Okay? But however, people since then, but however, coming to 20th century, 21st century, people started using systems. There were a lot of risk associated with those systems. Okay, and everyone agreed that the risks are there and the risk has to be mitigated. That's the reason, the board or the owners of those systems and the owners of those organizations who are using those systems wanted to have certain controls in place in terms of getting to know how the systems are working, whether those systems are working to give adequate value to the organization. So that's the reason this certification was introduced. And auditing, which is one of the important controls from the board point, board of directors and organization owners point of view, they introduced information systems to be audited. And for that reason, there was a lack of resources and there were a lack of competencies in the market to understand those systems and understand the controls within those systems, whether they are working as per the expectations, whether they're giving value to the organizations as per the expectations, what the stakeholders want. So that's the reason the CISA certification was introduced, and then gradually it has now been one of the pioneer certification in terms of auditing. I think pioneer, I would say it is the only certification which is recognized in the world in terms of information system auditing, and no other certification, and ISACA is the monopoly there. So no one has beaten ISACA there. Those knowledge base which is there in ISACA is found elsewhere, but combining all of them together and using it as a mechanism to upskill people is something fabulous which ISACA has done. Now, just to introduce you to ISACA program, this is generally a 5 days course, okay, in which we cover the 5 areas which the ISACA describes as the domains. And so I would be talking about those things, and I would like to have a very very interactive sessions along that, because it also covers the knowledge part, the body of knowledge. So it's not about learning, or it's not about grasping things, or it's not about knowing some terminologies. It's also about understanding how those terminologies apply. For example, if we say risk, I'm just taking an example here. Risk. Now, risk is any uncertainty to the business operations. Okay, any uncertain event that could cause disruption to an organization. Any uncertain event that could lead to our organization's objectives being impacted. That is risk. Okay, so you have to not only understand the terminology. That's the basic definition of risk, but you also see that how you apply that in your organization. Okay, you look at the risk, any uncertain events. Okay, what could be an uncertain events to my organizations, and how those uncertain events can affect my organization's objectives. Now, when I say my organization, it doesn't mean any organization which you work for. It means an organization which ISACA wants you to think of as an organization. They would basically want you to apply those terminologies, those things to an organization, and see what would you do to basically what best step you would take to address that issue. Okay, now I don't want to get into the details of what kind of questions they ask, but honestly, the questions are asked as that the questions are asking the most important, the first thing which you do, the primarily option you have, so all the options would be right as per the question, but you have to choose the best option as per how ISACA perceives the best option is. So you also have to understand ISACA's perspective towards that question, how you can address that. Okay, that's the reason we are understanding from ISACA's perspective, an organization's viewpoint. Okay, and then we would also have certain activities which basically enables you to understand those perspectives, and there would be discussion questions, there would be group discussions. In terms of case study, I would try to because when it's a classroom session, the group discussions becomes very interactive. I will try to be as interactive as possible in the group discussions. Okay, then we would also take real world examples of CISA subject matter. The real world examples could come from my experiences, could come from your experiences, or also it can come from what ISACA is putting up. Now, what are the benefits? I've already told you. It's the Pioneer certifications. It gives you competitive edge. It helps you to achieve high professional standards. When you go to say that I am ISACA, so your CV speaks about your knowledge and experience, and it's also quantifies and market your experience. Okay, so we have people like 18 years of experience here. Those people, it's not, I would say, it's a leap, which you can take up by having this certification. So your 18 years of experience can speak even louder when you have this certification with you. So we would have, I have trained people from 4 to 5 years of experience to 28, 26, 30 years of experience also. And if they only the CISO position, they were getting into CISO position, but they want to have the certification before getting into CISO position. Now, those kind of people I also have trained, okay, and they were able to clear the exams. So it is basically recognizes and, marks and recognizes your experience also, there. You can leverage your experience with this certification, then it also increases value to your organization. Okay, I was selling, CISA certification was introduced in 1978, okay, but it got prominent in 1990s when you have the information systems in place, in the world. Okay, so there was now there's a new version which came in 2019. Okay, and we would be dealing with that version. Okay, I have been certified in the previous version, which was 2016 version. Now after 3 years, they changed the organization. The ISACA changed some certain structures, and we would be doing the latest version, which is 2019 version. So these are the 5 domains of ISACA. Okay, and if you see, the 5 domains are, first is information system audit process. Now, what does information system audit means? What does audit means? Audit means to check and verify, isn't it? So audit means to check, verify whether the systems and controls are working as appropriately or not. Okay, so we would look at how do you ensure the systems are checked appropriately. In terms of audit, we will also study about the audit standards, the guidelines, the code of ethics. When you're auditing information systems, we would be understanding the business processes under audit, because audit itself is a project. When you go for an audit in an organization, we have people from Deloitte, we have an audit, it's a project altogether for an organization. Okay, so how do you plan, how do you plan, how do you conduct audit, then how do you report the audit findings and communicate to the stakeholders, and what are the post audit activities. So all these would be studied here. Then we will also look at the types of controls. There's a specific concept of risk-based auditing in domain 1. Okay, so that would be domain 1. And in the domain 2, we would have the governance and management of IT. The governance and management, so you have to understand the difference between the governance and management here. To see from a board of directors point perspective, what does he want from the IT infrastructure of the organization, and you also have to understand from a CEO's perspective, how does he enable the IT to value add to the organization. Okay, so we'll understand the difference between the governance and management, and also we understand where they meet each other. and how the IT systems, how, as from an auditor's perspective, how do you check whether the IT is providing value to the organization, okay, and whether we are realizing the benefits of IT in our organization. Then in the domain 3, we're going to talk about information system acquisition, development, and implementation. In information system acquisition, so when you acquire new systems in the organizations, when you buy new systems or you develop new systems or you implement those systems in the organization, from an auditor's perspective, how do you ensure that the steps for acquiring, developing, and implementing the systems are appropriately addressed or not, and whether those systems which are implemented are basically implemented effectively in the organization or not. Okay, then then we will talk about operations and maintenance of the information systems. Once the system has been acquired in the organization, developed and implemented, now you also need to worry about how do you maintain it, how that system can continually provide benefit to the organization. And so for that you require maintenance activities, you require business resilience, etc., to basically ensure that the systems is working appropriately till the end of its life cycle. Okay, then we also talk about protecting of information assets, which is a very important perspective from not only from regulatory and legal perspective nowadays, because that's where the higher focus is in these days, because there are a lot of regulations in terms of banks, telecom, oil and gas sector. There are a lot of regulations in terms of protecting the information assets, because information security has now, or cyber security has now become an important aspect even at a national level around the world. Okay, every country in the world takes information security or cyber security as a serious threat towards their critical infrastructure. Okay, so we also talk about protecting of those information assets. When you talk about information assets, we talk about the confidential information which the organizations have, the top secret information which the countries have, at a higher level, at a national level. So these are the 5 domains. Okay, let me also tell you about the exam, the structure of the CISA certification. So now this is called domains. Okay, now every domain is basically is divided, or is structured in a certain way. Okay, so we'll go to that structure. So every domain would have task statements. Okay, for example, information system auditing. So what are the tasks what we have in information system auditing? You would have driving a risk-based audit strategy, how to make an audit strategy. Okay, that is one task. Okay, or making audit strategy. Then there would be a task of planning the audit. Then there would be a task to conducting the audit. Then there would be a task to to communicating the audit results. Okay, and then there would be a task of reporting the audit results, and then there would be a task of post audit. What are the activities of post audit? Okay, so this is how every domain is being structured. And then for doing those tasks, there would be knowledge statements. For example, for conducting the audit, you would require knowledge of sampling, you require knowledge of controls, etc., etc. Okay, so this is how every domain has been divided. Okay, and then there would be certain test questions which we would discuss that would validate that if you have understood the concepts well enough. Also, as I said in the beginning, that there is a practical knowledge part of it, how you apply those tasks in an organization which is basically a perceived organization from an ISACA's perspective, and you are the auditor. Okay, so all the questions which would be asked in the exam is from an auditor's perspective. So being an auditor, what would you do in this situation? So the question would be situational, very situational. Okay, if you have been given a scenario and you are an auditor, what would you choose to do? in that scenario. Okay, that's how the questions would be. Okay, so the application of general concepts and standards is to understand the application of general concepts and standards is very important. And all questions would be multiple choice and designed for one best answer. Okay, all the answers would be right. You have to choose the one best. Now, the catch here is that you, from your perspective, may think that this is not the best answer. And I also contradict ISACA a lot in terms of the best answers. I think that they are wrong in their perspective as the best answer. But I have to right now think that I have to clear ISACA's exam, not my own exam. So I have to accept their best answer, okay, and make a thought process such that you know what ISACA's thought process is. You know, so ISACA is trying to create a thought process for you, okay, and that's something weird, but that's how it is. Okay, so from the beginning you must be aware of these things, and this is what I'm speaking from my experience. People may have their own experiences for ISACA exam, and so you know, you will have your own experience when you give your ISACA exam, and hopefully you will clear it. Don't worry. Okay, you have to read each question carefully. You have to eliminate known incorrect answers. Okay, and this is also my experience and everyone's experience. Many of these people's experience that you know you have to eliminate the wrong answer. You don't go for the right answer very quickly. So if you found the right answer, don't just say yes. Okay, you just have to also look at the other options. Okay, and try to eliminate them first. Okay, so if you think that this answer is right, just stick to it. Try to eliminate the other three first. Eliminate the other three means that you should be very convinced that the other three answers are wrong. Okay, and you might perceive that from the other three answers there might be some contention on one of the two answers, and then you might you know reduce the element of reduce the options for yourself. Okay, for example, you have four options, you try to eliminate two first, you know, which you think that absolutely no, this can't be answers of these questions, and then you are stuck between the two, and that's where you will find the most questions. You will be stuck between the two, you know, the two maybe answers. Okay, and then you have to think from ISACA's perspective. Okay, what could be the right answer from what I have studied in the training, in the I have read in the manual. Okay, so identify the keywords, make the best choice possible. As I said, identify the keywords or phases in the questions. So as I said earlier, most, best, first, you know, these kind of questions would be there. So identify the keywords or phrases in the questions before selecting and recording an answer. Read the provided instructions carefully. So there would be instructions to you guys when you set for the exams. Skipping over these directions or reading them too quickly could result in missing important information, possibly losing credit points. And this has happened with people I know. Okay, and they had to resit for the exams. Okay, they sometimes, you know, accidentally end the exam. You know, when you're sitting, you accidentally, you know, if you don't read the instructions properly, and then you click on end exam and you end exam in the first question, second question. Okay, and then it doesn't resume immediately. Okay, then you have to you know, somehow, because it's an expensive exam, you know, you $750, it's not a small amount of money. So and then you have to, you know, sometimes ISACA gives an option of resitting, sometimes they don't. Okay, then you lose that money. Now grading is basically solely on the number of questions answered correctly, so no negative marking, how we have for CISSP exams. Okay, and then no negative marking. If you mark it wrong, you are zero. Okay, you're not minus. And it is also not like CISSP, in which if you have 150 questions, then if you mark 80 questions right, it will automatically finish. You know, the CISSP exams are like that. But however, CISA exams will take you to 150 questions. You can go back, go front, you know, and you know, you can navigate to the questions easily. So these are some of 4 hours. The exam is a 4 hours period. Okay. So around 1.5 minutes per questions, and that's not less, I would say. Okay, if you're thorough with the material, you would answer in 30 seconds. Okay. Okay. I would skip these rules for you. I will go to the important one, which is exam scoring. So a scale score is a conversion of candidates' raw score on the exam to a common scale. Okay, so for example, if there are 32 questions in domain 1, so it will basically so it will not give you, okay, 32 questions, 32 marks. Okay, so it would be all the 32 questions would have different marks, different markings. Okay, so everyone will not be 1 mark each, like that. Okay, so 150 questions are scaled under 800. Okay, and you have to so it uses and reports the scores on a common scale from 200 to 800. Okay, no one gets less than 200. Okay, no one gets more than 800, obviously. Okay, so it's between 200 to 800. Then a candidate must receive a score of 450 or higher. That's a minimum score. I got 650, 656 in the exam. Okay, and one of the important domains, and you have to pass all the domains, so you have to score 450 in all the domains. Okay, so it's not, if you get a score of, for example, 600, but you score less than 450 in any of the domains, then you have to repeat the exam. So that's how it is. Okay, you get the score at the end of the exam, so it will give you a very little indication, small indication to say pass. It will flash on your screen that you passed. Okay, and it would be a very small sentence written there, and you will know that you have passed. You will not get the official result there, but you can come out of the center relaxed if you have passed. Okay, so but official result comes 10 days, and post those 10 days you can apply for the certifications with your experience. Okay, so there will be a score report, okay, in which you will see that how much you have scored in each domain. Okay, so these are the steps for the CISA certification. You need to pass the exam first, and then you have to submit the application with your experience. You have to sign, it's kind of checklist. You have to say that you would follow the ISACA code of practices and ethics, and you agree to comply to the CPE policy, which is continuous professional education points. Then comply with information systems auditing standards, which ISACA publishes. All right, let's start with domain 1. So first and foremost, we have to understand is the definition of information systems, how we perceive those information systems to be. Now, information systems is your laptop, is your desktop, is your mobile phone, okay, is your servers. So it's everything around you in terms of digital. Okay, so those are the information systems. Now, when we look at information system, we are not looking at a hardware only. Okay, we are also looking at the processes around that hardware. For example, your laptop, as simple as that. We have the process of the antivirus updating on the laptop. There is a maintenance process of the laptop, etc. Similarly, for servers, you have backup, you have release management, you have change management, you have the other processes, patch management, antivirus on the server. All those processes around that server is also part of the information systems. So when we are auditing information system, we are not auditing that hardware, we're also auditing the processes around that hardware. And why we are auditing is because there is a dependency of the business on that system. Okay, that's the reason we need to have processes around it. So when we talk about information system auditing practices, it encompasses the standards, the principles, the methods, the guidelines, practice, and techniques that an auditor use to plan, execute, assess, and review business or information systems and related processes. Okay, Now, as I said, information systems definition is very important for you to understand. You also need to understand there are certain governing mechanisms which has been defined by the industry. Okay, and those governing mechanisms basically are the standards. Okay, for example, if you see ISO 27001, okay, which is a standard for information security management system. Okay, and now that standard basically governs that how the information security shall be managed in an organization. Similarly, there are certain principles. Similarly, there are certain methods. There are certain guidelines, best practices, what we also call it as, and techniques which basically the auditor can use to complete its audit around all the phases of the auditing. Okay, which is plan, execute, assess, and review. So as an auditor, you must have a thorough understanding of the processes, the auditing processes. You should have thorough understanding of the information system processes, what I said, like change management, patch management, etc., etc. Whatever systems you're dealing with, you should have the understanding of those processes around it, around that information system. You should also have the understanding of the business, because ultimately the benefit of that information system is realized by the business. Okay, and it is helping the business to achieve its own objectives. Okay, and also the business wants certain controls to be in place so that those objectives are achieved effectively and efficiently. So you should also be having an understanding of the controls. Now, if I take an example here, for example, the information systems we're talking about is a server, and from that server, if you see what are the processes around that information systems. For a server, backup is important. Changes to the server, making changes to the server, new releases, patch management is an important process around that system. Okay, so you have to understand the processes around that, and then you have to understand how these processes would also have an effect on the business processes. Okay, for example, that server is supporting an HR function in an organization in terms of payroll. Okay, now if there is a patch release, if there is a patch management or a new patch release, or if there is less, if there is change to that server, how that will affect my HR payroll system, HR payroll management in an organization. Okay, and you have to see, okay, what control can I put in place so that it doesn't affect my business. Okay, now if you say change management itself is a process, okay, processes itself are controls, okay, but how do I ensure that the process are in line with my business objectives. Okay, so as an auditor, you are there to check, you are there to verify those processes, whether those processes, whether those controls which are in place are working adequately. Okay, and whether those processes continue to serve their business objectives. Any issue with those processes, how I would as an auditor you would try to verify those things through maybe through sampling, through various other auditing techniques to see whether the processes and controls are effectively working. So that's what we're trying to see here. So whether business processes and control designed to achieve the organization's objectives and protect the organizational assets. Now, upon the completion of this domain as an auditor, you would be able to plan an audit. Okay. Now, audit, as I said, is a kind of a project. Okay. So same project management techniques or the same project management methodology also works for an audit. Okay. So when you see when you say project management, you have planning, you have conduct, you're planning the implementation of that project, the scheduling of that project, and then implementation, development, and then post implementation. Similarly, you have planning the audit, conducting, which is your implementation, you communicate the audit progresses. Okay, you conduct audit follow-ups. Okay, and then you evaluate the management and monitoring of controls, the auditing. You also utilize data analytics tools to streamline audit processes. Look at that, then you will have to provide consulting services and guidance to the organization in order to improve the quality and control of the information systems. Now, this is not part of the audit, but sometimes when we have an audit called internal audit, there your role is something also related to consulting, where you try to improve the internal process. But if you go for an external audit, you don't do that. Okay, you don't provide consulting services. Then you also identify opportunities for process improvements in the organization's IT policies and practices. So these are some of the areas, and there will be many more. So this is not an exhaustive list. So these are some of the areas where you would, as an auditor, you should be aware of. Now, these are the topics in this domain are divided into two parts. One is planning, okay, and the second one is the execution. In the planning part, we would study about the audit standard, guidelines, code of ethics, okay, that is given by ISACA. We will understand the various business processes in an organization. For example, we are aware HR, finance, you have procurement, you have the physical security or the real estate of the organization, manage the administration of the organization, okay, and you have the ops, your operations, okay, etc., etc. So we would study about some of the common processes in every organization. We will also see the types of controls. Now, what are controls for? Controls are there to mitigate the risk, okay, to mitigate the risk to the business objectives. Then we will also talk about very important principle of risk-based audit planning. Now, you must be aware that in an organization, resources are limited. In every organization, resources are limited. Okay, that's the fundamental principle you need to understand. And if you say the resources are limited, you have to align those resources to the to an area where there is a maximum risk to an organization. Okay, that's the reason we call it risk-based audit planning. So as an auditor, I am limited. I am a single person in the whole organization. My focus should be on a core banking or a core application or a core business operations, rather than on maybe HR. Okay, so that's the reason we look at the maximum risk area of an organization and start auditing from there. Okay, so that the maximum risks are addressed in an organization. So this is basically the risk-based audit planning. You plan audit based on the risk to the organization. So you go for high risk first, and then medium, and then low. Okay, and this is how every organization works. Then you have types of audits. Now there are internal audits, external audits, second party audit, third party audit. Okay, we will see what arrangements we have in the various audits, and also what is the difference between an audit and assessment. Okay, so audits are basically done to verify things. Assessments are also done to verify things, but due to the different arrangements in an audit and assessment, your communication changes. Okay, your job responsibility also changes. Okay, in the execution part, we will study about the project management of an audit. Okay, as I'm continuously repeating from the beginning, audit is a project, right? We have to deal it as a project. Okay, and then we would also look at sampling methods. Okay, we would try to look at the audit evidence collection techniques, very important, because as an auditor, by principle, you should not give any findings unless until you have evidence against it. Okay, then you have data analytics. Nowadays we are using systems, for example banking systems, and telecommunication systems, where you require data analytics techniques to basically ensure that the system is working effectively. Okay, so we'll study about that, how auditing, how data analytics helps auditing to give better results. Then reporting and communication techniques, very important. Again, that would also depend on reporting and communication technique, would also depend on the arrangement of the audit. Okay, what kind of arrangement it is. Then we'll talk about quality assurance and improvement of the audit process. Now, audit also has a quality department. So generally all auditing functions have auditing department or quality department, in which, for example, if I give as an auditor, if I give a finding, then the quality of that finding would be judged. Okay, I would not say judged, basically I would say that would be assessed. Okay, for example, what kind of evidence is it, how that evidence has been captured, how effective that evidence is to say that this particular finding can affect the business. All that parameters are basically assessed. Okay, many like auditing firms, for example, EY, Deloitte, PwC, all these auditing firms have quality departments which verify that. Okay, and also external auditors also sometimes not they don't very gravely look into it, but they do look into that what kind of finding the auditor gives. And because we also have some contentions when we are audited, auditor gives a finding, we can raise a question that why did you give this finding to me. We can question them. They should be able to answer those questions appropriately to us. Okay, let's start with the first topic, which is planning. Okay, so what is an audit? So audit is basically, as I said, verify. Okay, another word for auditing is verifying, checking. Okay, so it's a formal examination or testing of information system to determine whether that system is working as per the applicable laws, regulations, contracts, and industry guidelines. Now these compliances like laws, regulations, contracts, and industry guidelines, these are basically depends on, again, country to country, industry to industry. Okay, supplier or a contractor to contractor, third party to third party. Okay, and also regulations is basically through regulatory bodies. So it also depends on, again, regulatory bodies are for industries. For example, there are TRAI for India, RBI for TRAI for telecom, RBI for banking, NPCI for payment gateway, IRDA for insurance. So they also have certain guidelines for the information systems. So information system has to comply by that guideline or by that regulation, by that regulatory body. Okay, so that is one thing you check. Okay, then the other thing you check is whether those comply with the governance criteria and relevant policies and procedures. Now you also have to see that information should function under so information system is owned by an organization, for example, that information systems has to work according to the internal policies, internal compliances of an organization. Okay, if you for example, if you take a server, that should also that should work according to the change management process, patch management process, and backup process defined by the organization. Okay, so that is one thing you check whether it's compliant to the policy, compliant to the laws and regulations. You check whether it is compliant to the internal policies and procedures of the organization. Third thing you check is whether that information systems is compliant to the CIA, is resilient to the CIA, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability at appropriate level. Now, what is confidentiality, what is integrity, and what is availability? Confidentiality is basically that the system doesn't allow unauthorized access. Okay, the system doesn't allow unauthorized access. Integrity means that the system doesn't allow inadequate modification or unauthorized modification. The system doesn't allow unauthorized modification to data or any other parameters of information systems. The third thing is availability, which is the systems allows the authorized people to work. For example, you're going on want to create you want to raise a ticket, you should be allowed to do that. Okay, you want to for example, if you want to go to accessing your emails, as email has been a very important operations, you should be allowed to operate your email. Okay, because you're authorized to do so. Okay, so that's also an important thing to look at from information systems perspective. So confidentiality, integrity, and availability should be maintained, and the information systems and we apply the controls to reduce the impact to the CIA. Okay, so you should also test the CIA parameters of of the system. Then the fourth thing is the efficient and the effective targets are met. Now, efficient is something which is related to cost. Okay, so IS operations are accomplished efficiently. You reduce the cost. Okay, effective means that they are done effectively. For example, you have an antivirus. First and foremost, efficient means the cost of the antivirus should not be too high, according to the organization. Effective means it should also prevent viruses, prevent malware attacks to the organization system or the information system. Okay, so these are the 4 parameters you need to look at when you are verifying and checking information systems. So first thing is the compliance to the laws and regulations. Second is about governance area or the compliance level to the internal policies and procedures. Okay. The third thing is the CIA, the impact to the CIA, and the fourth thing is about efficient and effective, operations of the information systems. So these are the 4 parameters you check in the audit. Okay. So audit process, we have 3 steps to it. Okay, one is planning the audit, we have conducting the audit, and you have the reporting and follow-up. Okay, so we'll discuss that. First and foremost, you need to understand the ISACA IS audit and assurance standard. So there is an audit standard by ISACA. I'll go to the website of ISACA to show you where it is. So if you check the resources, in the resources, you will go to framework, standards and models. Okay, there is this process called ITAF, which is Information Technology Assurance Framework. Okay, so this is a free standard. Okay, you might download this. So you have to select the language and download it. Now this is an important standard to look at. Okay, it has been downloaded. I have that with me. Okay, so this is called ITAF, which is your IT assurance framework. Okay, and this talks about the IS audit and assurance. So this is a standard basically. Okay, so first and foremost is a standard. So IS audit and assurance standards, which is divided into 3 parts. One is general standard, okay, and performance standard and reporting standard. Okay, so in the general standard, it talks about planning. Okay, there. Performance standard talks about conducting the audit. Okay, and then the reporting standard talks about the third phase, which is reporting. Now, this how to apply this standard, there is a certain guidelines which has been defined. Now the guidelines is this one. If you say IS audit and assurance guideline, okay, now basically both this, if you see, this is also audit charter, this is also audit charter. Here if you see, talks about a very brief of what it is. Okay, this guideline would tell you how to implement this audit charter in the audit assurance guidelines. Then there is tools and techniques in this particular document. Okay, IS audit assurance tools and techniques, and then there is also professional ethics part also there. In the tools and techniques, there is also professional ethics and standards there. Coming back to the presentation. So now what is this standard all about? So ISACA IS audit and assurance standard define mandatory requirements for IS auditing. Obviously, whenever you see a word standard, you must be aware that that's mandatory. Okay, and how do you understand that it's mandatory? Because the word shall is used there. Okay, so if you see here in the audit charter, wherever a word, if you go to page number 12 quickly, so if you see here audit charter, you will see the word shall is used. If you see, the word shall is used. Okay, so if you see everywhere, shall is used. So this is mandatory. When you say standard, this is mandatory. Okay, and when you go to guideline, page number 40, go to page number 40 quickly, and you go to audit charter, and the word should is used. If you see here, the purpose of this guideline to assist, and the IS auditor should consider this guideline. Now this is guideline. Guideline is non-mandatory. Okay, a standard is mandatory. Okay, so this is one difference you must understand, and you will see this is basically guideline purpose and linkage to the standard. Okay, Coming back, so that's the reason it is written standards define mandatory requirements for IS auditing and reporting and inform. Okay, so as an auditor, you must IS auditors of the minimum level of acceptable performance required to meet the professional responsibilities set in the ISACA Code of Professional Ethics. So you have to minimally practice the standard. Okay, that's the reason I said reading the standard is important for you guys, because that's the minimum requirement of an auditor. Okay, yes, you can also read the guideline, which would basically help you to implement that standard in your job practices. Okay, now then management and other interested parties of the professional expectations concerning the work of practitioners. Now you also have to understand that as an auditor, you work with other experts in an organization. Okay, for example, an auditor also works with IT people. Okay, for IT there is specific audits. That's what information system auditors are. Okay, then there is network people, then there is network audit, then there is a software audit. Okay, and then there are information security audits. Okay, so as an auditor, whatever your expertise is, you also work with other auditors, or you take the expertise of other auditors during your job. Okay, so that's so this particular standard also talks about that how to take work of other practitioners in your job. Okay, in your auditing. Okay, now you may not be a you may not be a network expert. Okay, then how would you audit a network? So you will take the expert, a person who has an expertise in network. So take his opinion, take his results to basically fulfill your auditing assignment. Okay, so that's this particular standard also talks about that. Then it also helps, basically this is also a requirement from CISA. Okay, as a CISA designation, you must be aware of this, the requirements of this. Okay, so holders of the CISA designation of their professional performance requirements is also something which is mentioned here. If you want, I can specifically go to that document and tell you where mentioned. So if you see here, proficiency of an auditor is also something which is an important parameter. Okay, now using the work of other experts, that's what I was talking about. Okay, 1206, clause 1206. Okay, that talks about using the work of other experts. Now I will also go to the Code of Professional Ethics. So these are the 7 Code of Professional Ethics which every auditor must be aware of. That's what you also sign when you go for certification after the exam. Okay, these are the 7 principles, I would say, or ethics statements that you must comply to. Okay, if you are found not adhering to any of the 7 principles, there is a possibility of getting your certification revoked. Also, there's a disciplinary process of ISACA against the CISA certification. Okay, I will go to that. We'll come to this later in the presentation as well. Okay, I will move forward. Now, the framework which I talked about already, ITAF. Okay, ISACA IS Audit Assurance Standards Framework. The framework of ISACA IS Audit and Assurance Standard provides the multiple level of documents. It talks about, as I said, standard. Okay, I talked about the guideline. Okay, so standard defined mandatory requirement of IS audit assurance and reporting. Okay, then there is guidelines I told that provides guidance in applying the standard. Okay, as an auditor, you should consider them in determining how to achieve, how to implement this particular standard. Use professional judgment here. Okay, in their application. Okay, now professional judgment. Now this, when the word judgment comes, it is not mandatory. It is discretionary, I would say. Okay, when you say the judgment, it becomes discretionary. Okay, in their application, and be prepared to justify any departure from the standard. Okay, there is a possibility of exceptions. Okay, always is possibility of exceptions, and then there has to be exception process around it. Okay, when you are applying that standard, and that you must be able to justify those exceptions from the standard also. So standard is not law. Okay, so it is not something you will be persecuted if you don't follow it. Okay, but if you have any exceptions, you justify that. It is good for you. It is good for the overall practice of auditing. Then there are tools and techniques, okay, that provide examples of processes the IS auditor might follow in an audit. Okay, and that also is basically mentioned here. Tools and techniques documents provide information how to meet the standard when completing IS audit work, but do not set the requirements. Okay, and requirements is again linked to the standards. Okay, so if you see, it doesn't, here it talks about mandatory requirements. Okay, but these tools are do not set the requirements. Okay, they never set the requirements. So as I said, there is general, which apply to the conduct of all assignments, deals with apply to the conduct of all assignments, deal with ethics, independence, okay, objectivity, due care, as well as knowledge, competency, and skill. Okay, when you talk about performance, it is about conducting. Okay, it talks about planning, supervision, scoping, risk, and materiality. What is materiality, guys? Materiality means the importance of that effect of that area. Okay, now whenever we look at materiality, we are not looking at it is basically the quality of the practice, okay, or the transaction or the amount. For example, if for an organization, a loss of for a big organization like PwC, a loss of $1,000 is not material, okay, but for them a $1 million loss is significant. Okay, so materiality is the importance of that particular loss or a transaction. So we use this in auditing a lot because we are trying to capture the most significant things first from an information systems perspective. Okay, for example, we're looking at the most important application of an organization, which can have an effect to their business operations. So always look for the material things, always look for the most important things for an organization. Okay, for example, if I go for a bank audit, I go into okay, what is the guard doing? I'm not looking at a CBC, a core banking system, CBS. I'm looking at a process of HR, for example, okay, which every bank has. Okay, but I should be looking at the most important, which is your CBS, the core banking system. Okay, so always an auditor, you look for the most material things, most important to the organization when you are doing the audit. Okay, so scoping, risk, and materiality. Okay, the importance of that area is very important. I hope I'm able to give that answer. Okay, and then resources also. So we also talk about resources because, as I said, every organization has limited resources. So how you utilize the resources to a maximum extent. Mobilization of the auditors. Okay, mobilization of the auditors, because again, limited resources, so you have to mobilize effectively, in terms of logistics, etc. Supervision. Okay, supervision of the auditors are very important in terms of the quality of the audit. Then assignment management. Okay, big auditing firms like EY and PwC, Deloitte, they understand this in terms of assignment management. So we have audits every year, we have surveillance audit, we have decertifications audit every 3 years, etc., etc. So all that assignment management is also very important. Then audit and assurance evidence, against evidence collection, storing those evidences, proving the quality of the evidence, everything is very important here. So in the performance category, we will look at all those things. Then the third category is reporting. Okay, so these third category among the categories of standards and guidelines. Reporting is very important in terms of types of report, okay, and means of communication, the information that is communicated. Okay, all three are very much important. And reporting also, as I said earlier, would depend on the type of arrangement or the type of audit it is. IS audit and assurance guideline. Okay, we talked about the standard. The guideline basically helps you to determine how to implement the ISACA standard. It also helps, as I said, use professional judgment in applying them, be able to justify any departure from ISACA audit and assurance standards. Now, as we discussed, code of professional ethics is very important, and we must understand that these 7 of them. So we'll discuss. So these are the three. We have two more, and then these are two more. So these are total of 7 code of professional ethics. I would like to discuss it from the standard itself because that gives a more better perspective. Okay, same here. Now ISACA sets code of professional ethics, okay, for its members and certification holders. So members and ISACA certification holders shall support the implementation. So you are an auditor, you are not there as a fault finding mission, okay. You are there, obviously you will verify and check, you will show the faults, but ultimately you are there to help them implement and encourage compliance to the standards. Okay, so you should support the implementation of, encourage compliance with appropriate standards and procedures for effective governance and management of information systems, including audit, control, security and risk management. Okay, then the second is to perform duties with objectivity. Now when you talk about objectivity, you are also talking about materiality. Okay, as I said, objective means you are there to assess certain, you should have the audit objective in your mind. For example, if I'm going for a information security audit, I am sure that I must be sure that what I'm checking, okay, I should have a kind of an audit objective that I would be checking this particular information systems. I will be looking for these things. Okay, so from an objectivity perspective, you should perform your duties. Okay, now you might go for network audit, you're looking for faults in network. You might go for software audit where you're looking for anomalies in the software. Okay, if you're going for a penetration audit, VPT, or a penetration testing, okay, the various anomalies in the system. Okay, so the objective of the audit should be clear. And also from an organization perspective, it must be clear from the person who has given you this assignment. Okay, what the stakeholder is trying to achieve through this audit. Okay, for example, many organizations do ISO 27001 to achieve tenders, basically for brand reputation, or also for ensuring that they are competent with their according to the industry guidelines, okay, etc. So the objectivity should be very much clear. Then due diligence is, you have to be very careful when you are doing the audit, when you're performing your duties. You should not be influenced by people. Okay, due diligence is independence. You should not be influenced by people. You should not take bribes, etc. Okay, and due diligence is not only about taking bribes, but also about you not getting influenced due to any reason. Okay, then professional care, again this is also about ensuring you are professional in your approach. Okay, and also so that should be in accordance to the professional standards that has been guided in the standards document. Always serve in the interest of the stakeholders in a lawful manner, okay, while maintaining high standards of conduct and character, not discrediting their profession or association. Okay, maintaining privacy and confidentiality, very important. Okay, you might be dealing with a lot of confidential information of the organization. Okay, so you should always generally NDAs, etc. I don't believe those are very effective mechanisms. The people say that they have an NDA with me, I can, please give me access to all the information. I have an NDA. NDA is never a good mechanism in an organization. Then maintain competency in the respective fields. Okay, you are competent in information security audit, you're competent in your network, so always try to achieve the expertise in whatever area you are working in. Okay, and agree to undertake only those activities, that's very important. Agree to undertake only those activities that can reasonably expect to complete with necessary skills, knowledge and competence. Now I do not do a network audit, I do not do a software audit, I do not do penetration testing audit, okay, or a vulnerability audit, what we call it as. So I do information security audit from a compliance, so I'm a compliance person. Okay, I don't take those assignments which I'm not competent enough. Okay, because that would not justify the job. my job. Then inform appropriate parties of the results of the work performed, including disclosure of all significant facts. If not disclosed, may distort the reporting of the results. Then the last one is support the professional education of stakeholders, enhancing their understanding of the governance and management of enterprise, information systems technology, including audit, control, security, and risk management. Now, also you are supporting the stakeholders and increasing their knowledge about their systems. Now, stakeholders invest the money in the systems. Okay, they're asking you also to come and audit them. So you should always make them more aware of their own information systems. You should also make them aware of their faults in their information systems and how those faults can affect their businesses. Okay, so these are the 7 what we call it as code of professional ethics that the auditor must follow. Okay, we've gone through these 3 slides. Getting to ITAF again. So again, this particular domain itself is a description of ITAF. Okay, so ITAF is a comprehensive and good practice setting reference model. Okay, it establishes standards, it defines the terms and concepts of IS assurance. Now, I have not discussed this term which is assurance. I would like to know what's your perspective on the word assurance. How do you define assurance? So assurance is basically a promise or a guarantee or a trust that we have on the system. For example, if you're sitting on a roller coaster and you are dangerous roller coaster, you are actually having assurance that I would come back alive, from that. So that's the reason you're sitting on that. Okay, so it's kind of a trust you have on that system. Okay, that this would perform as per the standards, and you have confidence on that system. So this is very important in terms of when you talk about air traffic control systems. You're sitting in an airplane and you are believing that the air traffic control is working as per the proper guidelines. Okay, so that's how sometimes it is that critical as well, and also is sometimes that not that much critical. When you are talking about, for example, banking, it is critical. It is for air traffic controls, it is critical. For critical infrastructures, all the critical infrastructures, it is critical. But for example, for an organization, for a small organization, it may not be that critical. Okay, so all that would depend on the materiality of that the area. Okay, so this particular, so it provides so assurance is that. So I was just getting to the definition only. I would come to the dependencies and resilience part later in the other domains as well. Then ITAF also provides guidance and tools and techniques on the planning, design, conduct, and reporting of the IS audit and assurance assignments. So audit is basically a part of comment on audit. Audit is also a mechanism where we try to get certain level of assurance. Okay, now we don't get a guarantee of the audit from the audit. Okay, doing an audit doesn't say that you have 0 faults in a system. Okay, audit is just a one kind of a level playing field assurance perspective. Okay, so audit is just a mechanism getting assurance. Okay, then we go to business processes. We are aware of, we'll go to this quickly because we are aware of the business processes. But from an auditor perspective, when you're going for the audit, you must do some research in terms of what kind of business processes that organization is dealing with, and if you get an understanding of that process, it would be easy for you to audit that. You may not have a complete understanding. Obviously, you will interview people and then you wouldn't have the complete understanding. But for example, HR, what does an HR do? HR basically hire people, talent management, payroll, training and development, etc., etc. So you should be aware of that. So you should understand and evaluate business processes. Okay, test and evaluate operational controls there, and then identify the controls such as policies, procedures, practices, and organizational structures. Okay, do you think organizational structure is a control, and why do you think organizational structure is a control? Policies are high level intent of the organizations. Okay, procedures are also controls. Okay, why procedures? The policies are very important because it's once the high level intent is not there. If the high level intent is not there, okay, for example, organization doesn't have an information security policy, stakeholders are not endorsing the information security as an important enabler to their organization, then you cannot do anything. Okay, you will not have any control. So first and foremost, policies are important because those are high level intent of the organization. Then procedures are important. Okay, procedures will tell you the day-to-day activities which you have to perform, okay, and how to perform those activities, basically step-by-step directions. Okay, then you have practices. Now practices are best practices. Now those are guidelines. Okay, those are like this is the best way to do it. Okay, or this is the best, these are things that you must take care while doing it. Okay, you may or may not do take care of that, but those are helping. Then organizational structures is also control. How do you think organizational structure is a control? How does it help as a control? For segregation of duties, job descriptions are segregated. Okay, so organizational structure is a control because it helps in decision making. Okay, so basically organizational structures as that segregation of duties. So it is more important from that perspective. I mean, so this is like you are defining a job description of a person. Okay, based on the job description he's been assigned certain things. Okay, and that control should be there, that there's a maker and a checker. Okay, that's the reason organizational structures are important. Okay, it would reduce the risk. So from I'm asking about when we talk about controls, it is trying to reduce or mitigate the risk. Okay, so from a segregation of duties perspective, it is very important because segregation of duties is a control that that basically reduces the risk for any errors and faults and frauds, etc. For this, in this section, we will also talk about internal audit function. Okay, internal audit function in the sense that how internal audit function is different from the external audit, okay, or the other functions. Then management of the IS audit function, okay, the planning the audit, okay, effective laws and regulations of IS audit planning, business processes, applications, and so internal audit functions. So as an auditor, as an internal auditor, you should establish an audit charter first. Now, what is audit charter? Audit charter talks about the responsibility, the accountability, the scope of an audit. Okay, and it must be approved by the board of directors and the audit committee. Okay, so if we go to audit charter definition in the ISACA guideline in the ITAF, so if you see here in the audit charter, it talks about the purpose. Sorry, the audit charter, it talks about audit charter indicating the purpose, responsibility, authority, and accountability. Okay, so it has four things. You have to remember this, and maybe if you want to, four things, which is the purpose, responsibility, authority, and accountability. Okay, these are the four things that that audit charter must have. Okay, the purpose of the audit, the responsibility of conducting that audit, the authority, okay, which initiated this audit or who the audit results would be communicated to, and the accountability. Okay, from internal audit function should be established by an audit charter, okay, which has to be approved by the board of directors and the audit committee. Now sometimes the board of directors also get a they have another committee which represents the audit. Okay, that's what the audit committee is about. Okay, now audit charter is an overarching document that covers the entire scope of audit activities in an entity, while engagement letter is more focused on a particular audit exercise. Now sometimes we have one is audit charter in which you have the complete plan of the audit of the whole organization, whereas engagement letter is specific to certain function. Okay, for example, you're going for a network audit, so there's an engagement you have done with EY, for example. Now you will sign an engagement letter with that organization, and it is basically focused. Okay, and you have certain time limits, etc. Okay, it's more focused on a particular audit exercise that is sought to be initiated in an organization with a specific objective in mind. For example, as I said, network audit or an information security compliance audit, etc. Said from the definition, this is also clear here. If you see, the charter should clarify the state management's responsibility and objectives for delegation of authority to the IS audit function. Okay, so charter should clearly state the responsibility, the objectives or the purpose, the authority, okay, of the audit function. Why do you think the auditors will also require authority from the board of directors? Asking questions to a department, area which you're auditing. You should, people may ask you, who are you? Why do you ask these questions, etc. That's the basic questions when you go to interview anyone. Okay, so by what authority you are. So audit charter is a document which you can show as a warrant, that I have an authority to basically audit you, and this is done, this has been asked by the highest authority of your organization, which is board of directors. That's the reason charter has the authority as well, so that you have the senior management or top management's approval on asking questions to the area or to the function. Okay, that's the reason authority is very important. Now, management of the IAS audit function. Managing our IAS audit function should ensure value added contribution to the senior management. Again, if they're giving you authority to audit, they also want, and they are doing it for a reason, that you would tell them falls in my organization, what are the areas for improvement, how do you are basically building upon their assurance. You're building their assurance on their organization's IT infrastructure. Okay, so if you're saying that these are the areas of improvement and of your organization, if you're giving them findings, it will basically help them improve the overall operations and efficiency of their organization. Okay, so as an auditor, you should ensure value added contribution, okay, to the senior management in the efficient management of IT and achievement of the business objectives. When you give them findings, they would act upon it, and that would also help them to achieve their business objectives appropriately. Okay, now first step is planning. When you're planning for an audit, okay, so adequate planning is very important. In the Japanese, there is saying that 70% of the time you spend on planning. That's very important, because all the major, I'm doing an implementation assignment, and I know this very well deep from my heart, that how important it is. The planning part, the audit plan, is how important it is. If you fail in planning properly, you mess up the whole thing. Okay, so plan and audit. Following tasks must be completed. List all the processes. Means the scope has to be very clear when you're going for audit. So you're listing all processes. You get the scope approved for the audit. Okay, then you evaluate each process by performing a qualitative risk assessment. Now, for example, I have 4 departments to audit. Okay, scope is clear. I have 4 departments. Now, who to start with? That is also very, very important. Who to start with? Again, the concept of materiality is very important. So you will do a qualitative or a quantitative risk assessment. Now, this risk assessment is not a risk assessment that we do for information security and the detailed assessment which you do. This is a kind of assessment which is a very high level assessment. Okay, in which you understand, you try to understand which are the critical areas of the organization. Now, for example, you have 4 applications to audit. Now, if you say 1, 2, 3, 4, and you say, okay, how would you check which application is important? Number of users. Which applications do you? So you will okay, number of users is easy for any organization to give you. Okay, and you will also do a risk assessment on the type of data that that application is storing, how that application, which process that application is supporting, which businesses operations is application supporting. So this is kind of high level assessment of risk you will do. Okay, so why you are doing this? Again, materiality. Okay, you're doing this to evaluate whether you're trying to capture the maximum risk in an organization. Okay, so evaluate each process performing a quantitative risk assessment. These evaluations should be based on objective criteria, what I just said. Okay, I gave you some examples of the objective criteria. For example, for applications, similarly you can apply it to business processes, you can apply it to different departments as well from a high level perspective. Okay, etc, etc. So then third thing is to define the overall risk of each process. Okay, then construct an audit plan to include all the processes that are rated high. Okay, which would represent the ideal audit plan. Okay, and that's what we call it as audit based risk strategy or audit based risk plan. Okay, Basically we call it strategy. Okay, so audit based risk strategy. Now when to audit, that's also a question. Why we have this question is because again, this depends on the criticality of the processes. So there is short-term audit, there is long-term audit planning. Now in short-term audit planning, you have short frequent periodicity. The periodicity reduces. Okay, in long-term audit planning, you have high periodicity. Okay, so short-term planning involves all the audit issues that will be covered during the year. Okay, for example, you have to conduct a surveillance audit, that is every year. So that is a short term. Okay, long-term planning takes into account all the risk-related issues. For example, there's a department which is slowly improving. Okay, which is slowly improving because that's a new department. It's not very mature, so you might go for a long-term audit here. So you are assessing, for example, some areas of that department, and then you give them a gap to mature, and then you are auditing the other areas of the department. Okay, similarly, so it's a very phased approach. Okay, in the long-term planning, and that would also depend on the IT strategic direction of the organization. Okay, for example, I was working in a bank in UAE, and they had the new area of banking. Okay, treasury, for example. I don't remember the name of that area, but for example, treasury, they were trying to have another area of business for them. Now that department has just begun. Okay, that area of business is just now initiated. Obviously they will not have 100%, they will not have the same processes what a bank initially has. They are trying to have one or two processes in place for the customers, for the new customers, and then they would have a maturity along the line. Okay, so if I go on the first day or maybe on the first year and say that, okay, show me all the processes, I start finding faults in them, starting reviewing them, then it may not be very much fruitful for that particular area of business. Okay, immediately. Okay, you will have a lot of findings, you cannot address those findings, etc., etc. Okay, so you take a long-term approach. So that depends on the IT strategic direction of that organization. Now audit can also be triggered when there is a control issue. Okay, so there's a new issue that is coming up. There are a lot of incidents that are happening in HR. Okay, there are a lot of data breaches that happened in HR, etc., etc. So if there are control issues there, the board of directors take a decision. Okay, now we must audit this HR department, try to assess those gaps in that department. Okay, so new control issues can also trigger. Fraud can trigger the audit. Okay, so that could also happen. Also, there's change in risk environment. You acquire new organization. Okay, you merge, you have mergers and acquisitions. Okay, now that could also change. So the risk environment has changed. Okay, so that risk environment changed, the technology have changed. Okay, or the business processes are changed drastically. That can also basically trigger an audit. Okay, so these are the steps for planning the audit. Okay, just quickly naming them. First and foremost, take an understanding of the business process, mission of that organization. What is mission? Mission is what the organization does. For example, banking, the organization deals with money. They create accounts. Now what do they do? They manage people's money, basically. So you should understand the mission of the organization. Okay, you should understand the objectives, whatever the top management has decided that these should be the objectives. You should understand the purpose of that organization, how that organization is helping its community, stakeholders. Basically, I would not say community, stakeholders like customers, suppliers, the internal employees. Okay, so that's important. And the processes. Okay, then understanding the business environment of the auditee. What is auditee? Auditee is basically the organization you are auditing. You are the auditor and the other organization is the auditee. Okay, then review, or sometimes auditee is also another party. Okay, you must understand auditee can be another organization, okay, which is asking you to audit that organization. Auditee is who has given you the assignment. Okay, then review prior work papers. Okay, prior work papers is basically a kind of a checklist. If you have certain questions to the auditee or the auditee management, then you ask them certain questions. You ask them for certain documentation for understanding their organization. That is basically review of work papers. Then identify stated contents. Okay, now the work papers are basically your content, policies, standards, required guidelines, procedures, structure. You study them. Okay, and then you perform a risk analysis to help designing the audit plan. So based on the work papers, based on the organized structures, you will understand, okay, what are the various things which are important to the organization. You do a risk assessment or risk analysis. Okay, and you prepare an audit plan. And then based on the audit plan, you will define the audit scope, okay, and the audit objectives. Okay, then develop the audit approach. Okay, approach and audit strategy. Okay, then assign resources, the auditors to different areas. Okay, and then finally you will address the engagement logistics. So that's the planning steps. Now after planning you will have the conducting of the audit. We'll come to that. Okay, so audit plan should take into consideration of the objectives of the audit. Okay, the relevant to the audit area is technology infrastructure, business strategic direction. Okay, so you should to have a better understanding, as I said, the work papers, which is your background material, publication, industry publication reports, independent financial analysis reports, etc. Now reviewing prior audit reports. Now as an auditor you can also ask prior audit reports, so for example, if you're going for a surveillance audit, you can ask, okay, give me a previous year's internal audit report. Okay, reviewing the business and IT long-term strategic plans. Okay, the materiality would be judged based on that. Okay, additional considerations: you interview key managers, understand their business issues, key regulations, identify specific regulations to IT. For example, a lot of regulations nowadays, as we said in the earlier, for example, the RBI for banking, TRI for telecom, NPCI for payment gateways, etc. The identify IT functions or related activities that have been outsourced. Very, very important in these times. Every organization has certain outsourcing. Okay, any third party collaborations. Okay, I was auditing a Airtel payment banks the other day. Every department has something that is outsourced to. For example, creative department, the social, the marketing department also. For campaigns development, they sign agreements with the other departments. Now there's a lot of exchange of confidential information between you and your third party. Okay, so that kind of arrangements also you need to check that what do you share with them. So that the outsourcing is an important aspect. Just to cut short this thing, that outsourcing is an important aspect that the auditors must look into. What kind of arrangement is there with the third party. Touring key organization facilities, again this is a walkthrough, we call it this is an important aspect when we look at physical security of an organization. In terms of information security, we go and tour the facility of the organization, try to assess the awareness of the people, we try to assess what kind of controls they have in terms of physical security, etc., and physical and environmental security. Okay, also touring the organization facility will also give you a insight of the culture of the organization sometimes. Okay, so as an auditor you must also match available audit resources such as staff with the task defined in the audit plan. So you have limited resources, you have certain auditors, you will have the task assigned to the various auditors according to the audit plan. Now certain laws and regulations, we were discussing them earlier as well. ISPs, banks, internet service providers, are closely regulated. So these legal regulations may pertain to financial, operational, and IS audit functions. So there is a legal financial for example, SOX compliance, that is basically financial regulation. Okay, for US companies, and now many companies which are working across the globe has to be SOX compliant. So you have to consider that as well. And then operational regulations are there. Okay, in terms of, for example, TRI, RBI, BCI, these are operational regulations. Then there are IS audit functions, regulations also. So for example, RBI says that you have to get every year audited by a CISA, okay, and you have to submit the CISA report to the RBI, okay, by the Reserve Bank of India. So that kind of regulations are also there, okay. You have to submit audit reports to the regulatory body every year as they demand. Sometimes they don't want you every year, or they would demand for an audit and then they would ask for a report. Okay, now there are two areas of concern that impact the audit scope and objectives. One is legal requirement placed on the audit. As I said, I gave you an example that there's legal requirement. Okay, and then legal requirement placed on the auditee and systems, data management, reporting, etc. Now, IS audit role and compliance. So determining the organization level of compliance, the IS auditor must identify those government or other relevant external requirements. Now, auditor, it's not a responsibility of the auditor to basically look at the various regulations, because that's the compliance department in the organization. So for example, I am a telecom. I should be aware that what are the various telecom regulations I should be following. Okay, now, so you will get that regulation, so you should be aware of that regulations. Okay, and then you also assess whether what level of compliance the organization is maintaining. Okay, so auditor basically asks for a legal plan or a compliance plan, or a kind of a process, SOP document which the organization maintains to ensure that they comply to all the regulations. Okay, so and the external requirements, and the auditor basically checks whether they are fulfilling that. Now, auditor may question the compliance plan itself. So that's the other case, that auditor say that this compliance plan itself is not adequate. So then plan is not adequate. Obviously, the compliance level is very doubtful. Okay, so as an auditor, you must also assess both the things, as compliance plan of the organization as well as the level of compliance. Okay, so identify those government and other relevant requirement dealing with electronic data, personal data, copyrights, e-commerce, e-signatures, etc. Computer system practices and controls. Then we have IT Act 2008 for that. Then the manner in which the computers, programs, data are stored. Many countries have retention policies. Okay, for example, in India, the retention policies is 7 years for logs, and so you have to go and dug out that what kind of requirements you have in terms of retention. Okay, and you have to follow that, and every country has its own. Okay, then the organization or the activities of the IT services. Okay, then you have the IS audits as well, so you have to also see that what are the requirements for the IS audits. Okay, for example, if you are maintaining an ISO 27001 certificate, you have to go for every year, you have to go for a surveillance audit and go for a decertification audit. So you have to see that what kind of arrangement it is, what kind of audit cycles the organizations require to have. So if you don't do a surveillance audit, your certification is invalid for ISO 27001 or any of the ISO basically. Now, IS audit steps and determining organizational compliance. So you document the applicable laws. As I said, every organization documents the applicable laws and regulations. Okay. Then assess whether the management and IT function have considered them. Okay, considered the relevant external requirements in their plans. Okay. Now, external requirements are contractual obligations sometimes. Okay, you have a contractual obligations towards third party towards the customer basically. Mostly those are towards the customer. You are an organization of telecom. Okay, you have certain requirement towards you are giving product, for example, to a telecom. Okay, you have certain requirements towards availability of that product towards that customer. Okay, in terms of services, the service level agreement. So you must also assess what are the relevant external requirements there. Okay, then obviously external requirements in their plans, policies, standard procedures, as well as business application features. So that's what I said in the service level agreements. Then review the internal IT department function activity document that addresses adherence to the laws applicable to the industry. Okay, determine adherence to the procedures that addresses these requirements, and then because the procedures should support the laws and obligations. Okay, so if the procedure says that the backup is, for example, a procedure says that backup has to be conducted. Okay, however, yeah, no, so sorry, the law says that you should have a backup of 7 years, but you should have a retention of 7 years. Okay, the law says that you have a retention of 7 years, but you don't have a backup mechanism based on that. Okay, you don't, you delete the data every 3 years. Okay, you delete the backup every 3 years. So your procedures should basically, the backup procedure should basically support your retention policy or retention law of that country. Okay, then determine if there are procedures in place to ensure contracts, agreements with external IT service providers reflect any legal requirements related to responsibilities. Now, sometimes what happens is that you have a contractual obligation to maintain the certificate of ISO, or you have to maintain PCI DSS, payment card industry data security standards. Okay, so you also have to see that whether those the external IT service providers and they combine it with the legal requirement. Okay, let me give you an example. For example, if you are a TRI member, if you are a telecom provider, you have to actually follow the regulatory guidelines. Now, for a particular license in a telecom, you require ISO 27001 certificate. Okay, for example, you are a wallet provider like Paytm. Okay, you have to follow the NPCI guidelines. Okay, and you also need to comply. And that becomes a legal requirement for you. Okay, so it is bound because NPCI is also a statutory organization which is bound by the government of India. Okay, and then it becomes a law or a legal requirement for an organization. So it becomes a legal requirement for them to fulfill now. Okay, it is not no more a kind of non-statutory requirement for them. It's a statutory requirement for them to fulfill. Okay, now we'll further move on to the business processes, applications, and controls. So in an integrated application environment, controls are embedded and designed into the business applications. As you are aware that we are using, for example, core banking applications for banking sector. We are using some Oracle systems, for example, for in telecom, for various or we use SAP systems in our organizations. Okay, these are basically a very integrated application environment for in an organization. Okay, they have multiple support. There are multiple supports, and there are multiple processes around that application. Okay, and they're supporting basically the multiple departments in an organization at the same time. Okay, so you must that there are certain controls and assurance levels that the organizations must adhere to. Okay, for that reason there are assurance levels. Okay, that is defined. For example, SAP is used by multiple departments for multiple purpose. Okay, multiple, and it basically for multiple processes in that department. Okay, so you must understand that there are certain controls that need to be placed to provide assurance of that activity. So these controls, for providing those assurances, you need to have adequate controls. So these are three controls that can be embedded in a bigger application. Okay, so that you are providing adequate you are providing adequate risk mitigation. Okay, now three types of controls are management controls, okay, programmed controls, and manual controls. Okay, so to effectively audit business application system, the IS auditor must obtain a clear understanding of the applications under review, and also when you are doing the review of their application, what as an auditor, what you are checking? You are checking the adequacy, the adequacy of. Okay, now there are different types of application. For example, there's e-commerce application, which is also a very bigger application. You have multiple processes in it. You have electronic data interchange. Okay, now electronic data interchange is basically your SCADA systems, your systems which basically provides inputs to another system. Okay, that kind of electronic data interchange. Now these electronic data interchanges is basically sometimes inter organizations, inter departments, etc. Okay, then email, we know point of sale POS systems, which is basically used in retail. There are multiple processes in it. The POS, you have billing section, you have purchase, you have purchase return, you have procurement, etc., etc. Then you have electronic banking, electronic finance. Then you have payment systems, electronic funds transfer, EFT or ATMs, supply chain management, purchase accounting systems, integrated manufacturing systems, ICS, your industrial control systems like air traffic control, SCADA, etc. Iterative voice response systems. Okay, generally, if you see IVR, we know when we call a support test, it goes to IVR. So that kind of systems are there. Then image processing systems, AI, DSS, and customer relationship management. Okay, moving on to using the services of other auditors. Okay, now using services of auditor, again experts basically, or maybe auditors in the sense of maybe you're auditing a third party, and that third party is getting getting audited by another third party who you are believing to be. Let me give you an example here. For example, I am a bank. Okay, and I am a bank, and PwC is working, is auditing me. Okay, I have asked the PwC, sorry, if I am a bank, I have asked the PwC to audit my third party. Okay, this is the arrangement. Okay, I have partnered, I have given a job to PwC to audit a third party for me. Okay, the auditor, the customer wants to come, and my customer wants to look at the reports that that how my bank is performing. Okay, so now I would be I am showing a PwC report of the third party. Okay, subcontracting. So from a customer perspective, I want to look at how a bank is complying, how my bank suppliers are also. So my bank shares customer information with the suppliers. Okay, so my bank would also always say that I'm protecting your information, but my information is not with the bank. My information is with the third party of a bank. Okay, so this kind of arrangement it is. Okay, now should I believe my bank's report, or should I believe the PwC report here? So basically, what I'm saying is I'm a bank. Okay, and my customer wants to look at how I'm protecting its information. Okay, but as a bank, I'm also sharing the customer's information with a third party. Okay, I've asked the PwC to audit that third party. Okay, who's storing that information? Shall the customer believe the bank's report or the PwC's report? I would not trust the bank's report. Okay, because bank will always say that I am protecting the information, right? I would trust a third party, which is a PwC report. As a customer, I'm auditing a bank, and I ask bank, who are you sharing my information with? Bank would say, I am sharing the information with the supplier or a vendor. Okay, now how do you ensure that that supplier is protecting my information? Okay, so bank would say, I am getting the supplier audited by PwC every year, and that's how it is being protected. Yes, I would not believe what bank would say. I would believe the PwC report, which says that my information is protected by the third party. Okay, so that's how you understand use the services of that's how you basically use the services of other auditors and experts. Okay, and other auditors basically. Okay, you look at their reports, you substantiate your findings based on the reports. Okay, so when using external and outside experts, consider the following restrictions on outsourcing. As I said, I discussed the outsourcing because that's the most important aspect when talk about using the services of other auditors. Okay, restrictions on outsourcing audit, security services provided by laws and regulations, audit charter or contractual stipulations. Okay, impact on overall specific IS audit objectives. Okay, that these kind of arrangements can also have impact on your audit objectives. Okay, impact on audit risk and professional liability. Okay, now there's a lot of agreements in terms of independence in the organizations, and it's a very big kind of a confusing zone for many organizations. in terms of independence. Okay, for example, PwC is also working for for that organization, and it is not allowed to audit. For example, in India, PwC is not allowed to do financial audit. Okay, due to some certain frauds happened, 2-3 years back. Okay, so that kind of liability is also there. Okay, then independence and objectivity of other auditors and so independence is one of the important aspects for the auditors and experts. Professional competence, qualification and experience, scope of work proposed to be outsourced and approached, then supervisory and audit management controls. Okay, so these are things that needs to be considered auditing while taking the services from the auditors and experts. Now this is a quick activity which I want to do with you. Now you have been assigned to an integrated audit. What is an integrated audit? Integrated audit is basically, just to cut short the discussion, integrated audit is when you're auditing multiple areas, multiple not areas but multiple what do we call it, objectives. Basically, for example, you're doing a quality audit combining with information security audit. Okay, that's an integrated audit. Okay, or you're doing an information security audit combining it with the operations audit. Okay, that's an integrated audit. So you have been assigned to an integrated audit, finance, business ops areas. No, so that's not integrated audit. So that's not what integrated audit. Integrated audit is you're doing two audit. You're checking for two different audit criterias. Okay, now audit criteria is, for example, quality, information security, operations, finance. Okay, so you're looking at the quality of the system. You're also looking at the information security of the system. You're also looking at the operational effectiveness of the system, and also you're looking at the finances of that financial effectiveness of that system. So that's 4 things together. That's our integrated audit. Yeah. So you have been assigned to an integrated audit of a payroll process and need to plan the IT audit portion of the engagement. Okay. What is the most important business process area that you need to consider in a payroll? So to help you perform the audit, would it be better to know the IS audit budget or to know the CIO and CFO risk profile for the payroll process? So what is the most important business process area that you need to consider here? Now, this is a question for you guys. Okay, so due to resource constraints of IS audit team, the audit plan as originally approved cannot be completed. Assuming that the situation is communicated in the audit report, which course of action is most acceptable? Okay, so you will focus on auditing high risk areas. Okay, because of the resource crunch. Okay, coming to the next question. This is true. So you verify the software in use through testing first. Okay. Now this would be the we'll try to complete this section, which is the types of controls, and this is a very easy section. So basically there are different types of controls in which you try to manage the risk. Okay, risk transfers. Okay, and risk avoidance. Now avoidance is different from elimination. Risk avoidance is basically when we don't take the risk. Okay, for example, there is a business unit which is not working properly. Okay, and there's a lot of business risk to it. You just shut that business. Okay, that is called avoiding the risk. For example, I'm going from point A to point B. I'm going to point A to point B through a car, and I see a risk of the rain. That rain can happen. Okay, so I'm not going at all. That is called the risk avoidance. Okay, accepting the risk is that you are going there. Okay, and whatever rain comes, I would take the proper controls, but I will go. Okay, that is called acceptance. Mitigating means you're taking proper controls in place. Okay, and then you are accepting it. Okay, then what we have, the third option is risk transfer. Okay, now there's no transfer option here. Okay, but generally insurance or other things are there, or outsourcing things, where we transfer the risk to another party. Okay, so controls are there to basically minimize the risk. Okay, to mitigate the risk. So every organization has controls in place. Okay, and effective controls that is one that prevents, it detects and contains, okay, or reduces the impact. okay, and reducing the impact of that particular risk event. Okay, so it prevents, so controls prevent, it detects, and it contains or reduces the impact, and also there are certain controls which helps in recovery. Okay, now we'll come to those examples on a later stage in this particular area in the domain, but it is very important to develop, monitor, implement, design the information systems controls, okay, in place to basically, okay. Now, controls, as we discussed earlier, could be policies. If you remember, we discussed the controls. It could be policies, could be procedures, could be practices, could be organizational structures. Okay, so that four things you have to remember: could be policies, procedures, practices, and structures that are implemented to reduce the risk to the organization. Okay, coming to internal controls are normally composed of policies, procedures, practices, and structures, as I said, that are implemented to reduce the risk to the organization. Okay, internal control should address what should be achieved and what should be avoided. Now, they are preventive, as I said earlier, preventive, detective, corrective controls. Now, preventive, these are some of the examples here. Now, preventive controls always detect the problem before they arrive. Okay, before they arise. They monitor both operations and inputs. Okay, attempt to predict problems before they occur. Okay, prevent an error, omission act of occurring. Okay, segregation of duties, for example, okay, is a preventive control. Okay, which basically detects errors, prevents frauds, etc. Then control access to physical facilities, control access to physical facilities. For example, you have ACS, access control systems for physical security. Okay, use well-designed documents for printing. You have input validations, etc. in an application. That's also a part. That's also an example of preventive control. Detective control, CCTV, which basically only detects, reports the occurrence of an error, omission, or malicious act. Then you have corrective control, which basically post detection, it also correct the things. Okay, so it minimizes the impact of a threat, remedy problems discovered by detective controls, identify the cause of a problem. Okay, correct errors arising from a problem, modify the processing systems to minimize the future occurrence of the problem. Okay, so these are the different control types. Then we have the control objectives and control measures. Okay. Now, control objective is basically very simple to understand. Okay, every control has an objective to prevent, and then there could be. So first and foremost, we don't define the control. First and foremost, we define the control objectives. For example, what do we want to protect us from? Okay. Based on the control objective, you apply the control measure. Okay, so first and foremost, you have to define the control objective. What do you want to achieve from that control? What do you want to achieve? Okay, or what risk you want to mitigate? That would, from the risk, there would be a control objective, and from the control objective, there would be a control. Okay, for example, a control objective can be malware protection. Okay, I want to protect my systems from malware. Now, to achieve that control objective, I would apply controls. I would apply antivirus. I would apply, patches. Okay, I would do penetration testing of my system. All these are controls to achieve that. Okay, so control objective is basically defined as an objective of one or more operational areas, okay, to be achieved in order to contribute to the fulfillment of strategic goals of the company. Okay, now strategic goal of the company could be related to your risk, which is the high level risk of the organization, and how that risk is basically helps mitigating of that risk will basically help your business objectives to be achieved efficiently. Okay, so that is the control objective. So that is the control objective is such a goal that is especially related to the strategy of the company. Okay, then control objectives are basically they are statements. Okay, they are not basically controls, they are statements what we want to achieve. Okay, always remember that control objectives are statements of the desired result, or the purpose to be achieved by implementing that particular control. Okay, now this control can be any procedure, any policies, any organizational structure, or any practice. Okay, Now, control objectives apply to all controls. Okay, so for example, if you have a control objective, as I was telling you, malware protection, okay, you should have a controlled measure, okay, an activity contributing to the fulfillment of a control objectives. Both the control objective and control measure serves the decomposition of strategic level goals into such a lower level goals and activities that can be assigned as tasks to the staff. Okay, for example, a procedure. Okay, so this assignment can take a form of a role description in a job description. Okay, I hope that the two definitions are clear in terms of control objective and control measure, or we generally call it as control. Okay, to the next slide, which is control objective, as I said, is a statement of the desired result that is to be achieved by implementing the controls around the information systems. Can comprise of policy, procedure, practice, operation structures designed to provide reasonable assurance that the business objectives will be achieved and undesired events will be prevented, detected, or corrected. Now, these are some of the control objectives that can be applied to the information systems. Okay. Now, if I would, take few of them, here. So, safeguarding assets. I think this is a control objective that every organization would have. Protecting the information assets. Then, if you have an SDLC software development in your organization, so you will say that okay, the processes should be established in place and operating shall operate effectively. Okay, and if you have if you're using OS, you will say that okay, integrity of the OS environment should be maintained, integrity of sensitive and critical application systems environment should be maintained. Now, these are some of the objectives that are common to an organization. Okay, in terms of, for example, if you come down to SLAs, should meet the service level agreements and contract terms and conditions to ensure organizational assets are properly protected and meet the organizational goals and objectives. So, but when you're looking at the control objectives, you must also take into consideration how this control objective is linked to my business objectives as well. Okay, and how it is giving value to my organization. Okay, so and as an auditor, you should also see that from how this particular control objective is serving the business objective, and how this control objective is achieved through various controls in the organization at the same time. Now, there's some of the general controls. Every organization has these general controls. Now, internal accounting control that concerns safeguarding of assets and reliability of financial information. Operational controls that concern day-to-day operations. Okay, there are administrative controls which talks about operational efficiency in terms of cost in a functional area, and adherence to the management policies, internal management policies, organizational security policies and procedures to ensure proper usage of assets. We have overall policies for the design and use of adequate documents and records, access and use procedures and practices, physical and logical security policies for all facilities. So these are some of the general controls which every organization has. Then there are specific IS specific controls, okay, information system specific controls. Now, each general control can be transferred into a more in detail specific information system control. Okay, for example, here if I ask you, administrative controls concern the operational efficiency in a functional area. Okay, or if I talk about reliability of financial information. Okay, if you take this example, reliability, safeguarding of assets and reliability of financial information. What do you think is the information system specific control would be? For safeguarding of assets, you have information security management system. Okay, so each general control can be translated into IS specific controls. The IS auditor should understand the IS control and how to apply them in planning the audit. Okay, so you can do it based on the general control. You can also address information systems. You can drop down to system specific controls. IS control procedures include strategy and direction of IT function, general organization management of the IT function, access to IT resources including data and programs. So someone talked about transactions data. Obviously, you can assess to look at how the access to IT resources including data and programs. Then system development methodologies and change control. Okay, these are some of the specific areas the organization can apply the controls. Then there are operational procedures, there's system programming and technical support functions, there's quality assurance procedures. Then there is physical access controls procedures. Okay, there is business continuity planning, disaster recovery controls, network and communications controls, database administration controls. Okay, and that's the reason we have, if you want to look at network and communication controls, there's a network audit that is formed in many organizations. Database audit is another area where you also look at the database administration. Okay, very important, many organizations, okay, where data is critical. Okay, specifically banks, if you say so, the administration of the database is something very critical. Then protection and detective mechanism against internal external attacks, which is your penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, etc. Okay, we would do the risk based audit planning. Okay, so now this is just a repetition of what we have already talked about a lot. We'll just go through it, but you need to understand, here is the nature of business. Okay, nature of business, the auditor must understand. When you talk about risk-based audit, the auditor must understand nature of business. Auditor can identify and categorize the types of risks that will be better to determine the kind of risk model or approach of conducting the audit. Okay, for example, if you are in a bank or a telecom or a oil and gas, the risk would change. Okay, based on the risk of particular industry, you should be able to, that should be your model. You should prepare your model based on the type of industry. Okay, for example, if you're doing an audit of a nuclear power plant, okay, now your risk perspective would change. Okay, and if you're doing for a bank, the risk perspective should change. Okay, so you should be you should understand the nature of business. Based on the nature of business, you should apply the auditing practice. Okay, so knowledge of the business industry is very most important thing. Gather information and plan. Take prior audit results if possible. Okay, if you are doing a first time audit, then it's not possible. Then recent financial information of that organization, because that is important in terms of materiality. Okay, for an organization, maybe $1,000 loss is nothing, and then inherent risk assessment. Now, okay, so you're also looking at inherent risk there. So you are looking at risks. Now, inherent risk is basically risk without control. For example, I'm giving a very lame example. For example, there's a building, and I would say that this building can catch fire. Okay, this building, we can have earthquake here, and etc. Okay, it is flood prone. Okay, I'm not looking at the controls right now. I'm looking at the inherent risk to that building. Okay, now I can have fire extinguishers, I can have water detector systems, I can have earthquake resistance, etc. But I'm not looking at I'm not factoring in those things. I'm just looking at from a high level perspective, what could be the risk to my organization. Now, the benefit of doing that is that you would cover all the risks. Okay, you are covering a lot of ground there. You're not factoring in the controls, you're covering a lot of ground during your assessment. Okay, you are factoring in fire, factoring in earthquake, you're factoring in flood, you're factoring in theft. Okay, but if you factor in the controls, for example, you say that there's a earthquake resistance. Now you're not factoring the earthquake. You're not putting that earthquake as a part of your risk. Okay, you might reduce the risk once you factoring in the controls. Okay, so always look at the inherent risk, not the risk which is after the controls. Okay, as an auditor, you should always look for inherent risk, not the risk after implementation of the controls. Okay, I hope inherent risk is clear to you guys. I'm not the inherent, let me repeat that because that's an important concept in terms of CISA exams is concerned. Inherent risk is risk without factoring in the controls. For example, I'm going from point A to point B. I am not looking at any controls that can be applied here. Okay, I'm just saying, okay, if I go from point A to point B, I can my tire can get punctured, I can meet an accident, a rain can come. So these are the inherent risks which I am factoring in. I'm not saying that, okay, I'm wearing a raincoat or I will follow the traffic control, I will follow, if in terms of meeting an accident, I will follow all the rules, etc. I'm not factoring anything. Okay, so we are looking at, from our auditor perspective, you are looking at inherent risk without factoring in the controls. Then obtain understanding and internal controls. Now you are factoring in the controls. You are seeing, okay, now these are the risks inherent to the organization. Now I would look at the controls. Okay, I would look at the control environment. Okay, very important in terms of control. Okay, I will look at the control procedures. I will look at the detection risk assessment, control risk assessment, equate total risks. Okay, then perform compliance tests. Okay, identify key controls to be tested. Okay, now once you know the controls are there, now you will perform the compliance test. Okay, you perform the test of those controls. Perform the test on reliability, risk prevention, and adherence to the organization policies and procedures. Then you also perform the substantive test. Now compliance test is just yes or no. Okay, for example, you have an access control system, yes or no. You have a security guard, yes or no. So that's a compliance test. But when you do a performance substantive test, you basically do analytic procedures. Okay, for example, access control system. So you will see that, okay, has the people who left the organization, have they been deleted from the access control systems? Have those deleted, the people who have left the organization, have they accessed the systems after they exit? Okay, that's kind of a analytical another approach to a one step ahead, in depth to those compliances. Okay, so you apply analytical procedures, you do a detailed test of account balances, other substantive audit procedures. Now these are used in basically in banking. For example, you say that a person has made a transaction, whether the bank account has whether the right hand side is equal to the left hand side. So you send the money to someone, your account balance should get down, the account balance of the other person should get up. So now this is a substantive test we perform to ensure that the integrity of that transaction. Okay, to ensure integrity of that transaction. Okay, it's kind of make a checker, or in a balance sheet you have a left hand side equal to the right hand side, etc. kind of procedures which you apply. So you check the logic of that transaction. Okay, then you conclude the audit. Okay, in terms of create recommendations and write the audit report. Okay, so these are the risk-based audit planning technique. Okay, and these are things that may impact the audit approach. Okay, audit risk and materiality. As I said, inherent risk. I explained you earlier, as it relates to the audit risk, it is a risk level or exposure of the process entity to be audited without considering the controls that the management has implemented. Inherent risk exists independent of an audit and can occur because the nature of the business. Okay, as I said, building earthquake can happen, fire can occur. Okay, flood can happen. So this is the inherent risk. Now controlled risk is basically the risk that a material error exists that would not be prevented, detected on a timely basis by a system of internal controls. So control risk, even if a control is present, there's chances that the control may miss the risk. Okay, for example, control risk associated with manual reviews of computer logs. Okay, if you're doing a manual review of a computer log which is thousands in number, okay, there's a high probability that you would miss the information. Okay, so the control risk associated with computerized data validation procedure is ordinarily low if the process are consistently applied. Then there's a detection risk. Again, the risk that the material errors or misstatement that have occurred will not be detected by the IS auditor. Now there's a possibility, because audit is not a guarantee, it's assurance. Okay, so there's a possibility that as an auditor we fail to identify any risk, we fail to detect the risk in the system. Okay, and that happens. We are human beings, and this has happened in many organizations, that the auditor failed to detect errors, and that error was there for a very long time, and then one auditor came and he detected the error, and then he looked at the previous reports also, the error was missed. etc., etc. So there's a detection risk also from an auditor's perspective. Then the overall audit risk is also there. Okay, now the overall audit risk is the probability that the information or financial reports may contain material errors and the auditor may not detect an error that has occurred. Okay, now the so overall audit risk is by the auditor. Auditor can also fail to detect an error, okay, that has occurred. Okay, now okay, sorry, so the difference between detection risk and overall audit risk, you must understand. The detection risk is that the material errors or misstatements that have occurred will not be detected by the IS auditor. Okay, similarly, the overall audit risk is that the material errors auditor may not detect an error that has occurred. So it is almost a similar definition what we have for detection and overall audit risk. Okay, now the objective in formulating the audit approach is to limit the audit risk, okay, in the area under scrutiny, so that the overall audit risk is at a sufficiently low level at the completion of the examination. Okay, coming to risk assessment, we know basically the auditor risk assessment basically assess the auditor in identifying the high risk areas, and also it helps in evaluation of controls. Now risk assessment should identify, quantify, prioritize risks against criteria for risk acceptance and objectives relevant to the organization. Always remember that risk assessment should be able to is assessed based on a criteria. Okay, for me, organizations have different criteria. Okay, every organization has to define the criteria on basis of what they want to consider this risk. Okay, every organization will have different criteria, okay, for acceptance. Okay, now for me, as I said again, $1,000 loss is very much, but for a big organization, it's nothing. Okay, so based on that level, okay, you would say, is it high, medium, low? Okay, and an organization has to decide whether it would accept the low risks or medium risk, or it will also accept the high risk areas. Okay, that the organization has to do, and it also depends on nature of the organization. For example, a nuclear power plant, even a low risk, it would be very much for an organization. For example, a library, even a library is an organization, but for them, that risk may not be that much. Okay, they would only consider high risks to them. So it would depend on the nature of business also. Okay, it supports now risk assessment supports the risk-based audit decision making, as we have already studied about risk-based auditing principles. So it supports the decision making by considering variables such as technical complexity, level of control procedures in place. Okay, for example, there's an area where a lot of controls are present, and the risk is less material. Okay, you may want to consider it as a low risk area. Okay, the level of financial loss also is something which should be considered. Okay, for example, if a risk materializes in if a risk is triggered, a risk is we call basically materialized, means that happens. A risk event in reality happens. What would be the financial loss? Okay, generally many organizations use this financial loss as a criteria, okay, in terms of high, medium, low. Or maybe sometimes organizations say that if their risk is less than 1 million, then it would be accepted. If risk is more than 1 million, it would be mitigated. Okay, or a management decision needs to be taken. So we can also define a financial loss figure against that. Now there are multiple risk responses. As I said, risk mitigation is to reduce the risk, appropriate controls, accept the risk in terms of knowing it, okay, knowingly, objectively, not taking action. Because sometimes, for example, organizations, there's too much cost to accept the too much cost to basically mitigate it. That's not how their business is. There is no financial support there. I will give you acceptance example here. Then the risk avoidance is basically not doing that activity at all. You're not allowing actions that would cause the risk to occur. Okay, for example, I give you an example of going from one place to another. If I see that there's a rain that would come, I foresee a rain, I don't go. So that is avoiding the risk. Okay, then risk transfer is sharing, transferring the associated risk to the other party. Now, risk transfer has to be very much, a decision that the management has to take with very cautiously, because now when you're transferring the risk, you are not transferring the responsibility of the risk occurrence. It means, for example, you're taking insurance for a fire. Now you're caught, the fire, happened. Now you have only looked at the financial aspect of that risk, but again, if you see that how your employees are suffering, how your suppliers are suffering, how your customers are suffering, again, that responsibility is on you. It's not on the insurance provider to look at. So you are basically not transferring the entire risk, you are just transferring the financial aspect of that risk to the insurance company. Okay. Now, in terms of risk acceptance, very much important is to look at, you're deliberately not taking action. Okay, you are not taking action because costs of that control to be put in place. For example, I went to an audit where it was a house. I went for an ICICI Bank audit, and it was just a simple house, and there were two systems there. It's a third party of an ICICI Bank. Okay, there were two systems, and only one employee was there, and one employee was on leave. Now, what they're doing is, bank is sending them a form for their club membership. Okay, they're typing in the club membership, they're scanning the document, and they're sending it back to the bank. Okay, so it's a manual form which comes to the third party. The third party types in, do the data entry of that form, scans that form, and send it to the bank. Again, send it to the bank. Okay, now this is a small organization. They are dealing with PI information of the bank customers. Okay, now what I see here is that now I asked them to have an antivirus. I asked them, these are the controls that need to be in place. You don't have these controls. You're using your personal systems for storing bank information. You don't have antivirus, etc. I gave the list of findings there. So he said, I get 10 rupees to fill this form, each form. Okay, do you want to apply this control for 10 rupees which I get from, I don't want business from ICICI Bank. So that's what he said to me. So I said, that's how it is. You accept the risk knowingly and objectively, not taking action. Okay, but again, the risk is to the bank. Okay, now this has been transferred to him, but again, he's not able to properly handle that. Okay, now I don't know what happened. I gave the report to them. I don't know whether the business is still with that third party or not, or whether these situations can happen. So your risk response option should be very much in line with the option very carefully. Any organization should take that option very carefully. Okay, thank you guys, thank you very much.